Hey everyone, Cone here, and I have a GoPro strapped to my head, so that can only mean one thing. So today we are continuing the deconstruction process of the Supercharged 240 build, and well, that means taking off something we actually put on last time because I was too impatient and I had to see what the old supercharger looked like on the car. So there it was. Let's get that back off of there so I can get back to doing the stuff that needs to be done. Oh god, I forgot how heavy that was. I'm actually going to put this oil filter back on the engine just so we don't risk getting random stuff into the oil, even though I'm going to change this oil before it ever runs again. You don't want stuff down in the oil pan. And I plan to do quite a bit of cleaning here. As you can see, it's gotten quite grungy over the years. So let's start working on that. So this hose here stays. This is something that goes up to the top of the intake manifold, which is a part we are keeping. And this one is for the heater core, so I need a hose that will go from here all the way back, which I believe would be the bottom one, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it looks right. So something that'll go from here to the bottom one. Should be a nice, easy, straight shot, but it's something I'm going to get a new one of. Haven't gotten an answer on the PCV yet. I expect to have to replace this hose with something else. Let's take a look at that intake manifold real quick. Well, I think I'm just as confused now as I was before. This has to be for the brake booster. And then on the actual plate, we have one for a boost gauge, and then this for... good question. This is probably for the wastegate, as I see the wastegate is not hooked up down there. These are all things I have to find out from the original owner, just to see how he had it, even if I do replace these lines and whatnot. So we have an extra vacuum on this side, which I suspect goes to here. And then this would go somewhere else. That's an awful small line, if that's what he was using for the PCV. So I suspect that's not the case. This is more likely for... I suspected it was something for this, which is the idle air control valve. That is not the case. This will go basically from the intake pre-throttle body to the intake post-throttle body. All this does, the only purpose of this part is to let air into the engine to let it idle without having the throttle plate open at all. And that's how most fuel-injected cars work. That has no real bearing on what we're doing today, but it's worth considering. So this mess right here is fan controller stuff. All will get redone and done more properly. So let's go ahead and remove that. The controller works fine, so I'll keep the controller and the little bracket here. Just need to redo some wiring. I've gotten much better with doing good solder connections instead of, you know, these little blade connectors that are crimp cut onto there. So we'll solder all those together and make them nice. Okay, there's all that. I'm going to keep it together because I'm going to pull the radiator too, just to try and give myself as much room as possible. And we need to work on figuring out how to get this guy to be closer to the radiator. It seems like if this was still here, that'd be okay. It's this part that needs to become closer to the radiator, which is going to be another reason to get rid of this, even though that was already on my agenda. That was pretty simple, so definitely worth the time. Gets one more thing out of the way. Race car. I actually had to do this because it's been that long since I drove the car. It was winter, And with this radiator in there and no condenser, this car would run way, 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 way too cool. Weight savings. Okay, well, this is the coil. It no longer needs to be here. It no longer needs to be part of this car, so I'll just remove it. For the time being, I'm going to leave the distributor in there, just in case I should need to get this engine to top dead center. It's easier with the distributor in there than without. It's just a nice quick guide to get it there. And it's not really in the way of anything. Eventually I'll need to make a plate to block that part of the head off. Do I have a spare head? No, I don't, so I can't show you that. But yeah, just to block that from keeping oil from flinging out of there, because there will no longer be a distributor on this engine. Okay, before I pull these fuel lines off, let me tape this one up and label it with an R. And it's now on video, so I can remember that this is the return line, because it's super easy to mess up. And I've done it multiple times. This is the return line, took it off. It's got a nice little kink in it over the ears. And this is 50 PSI line. And this is on the return side, so it never really sees a whole lot of pressure. But I'm still going to replace it with some fuel injection lines, some stronger stuff. And then let's see what's on the pressure side. I built the car and this stuff as a surprise to me. Let's try not to get fuel everywhere. It's gonna happen, regardless, but fuel's gonna go everywhere. Geez, did I have that hose down far enough? Yep. Okay, I went ahead and taped off the intake ports on the head, just because I'm a nervous Nancy and I don't like the thoughts of things falling down into the head. And, you know, destroying things. I wanted to clean out, look at that. Little clip, all sorts of crap in there. Clean out stuff like that. But let's move on to some other things. This here is the positive from the battery. It previously just goes straight to the starter. And these two, one from the alternator, so it takes the power from the alternator to give it to the battery. And this one here, I believe, is to give power to the fuse box, which gives power to like the running things, like the like your headlights and your blinkers, stuff like that. So this distributes power to those. I had at one point thought maybe it was time to remove this and get rid of this lower harness completely. No longer thinking that way, even though it's going to be an issue getting the starter power now. This gives it power to crank. This gives it power to start. In his setup, it didn't work anymore that way because the ECU was never giving it trigger. Well, we're not going to have an ECU, we're going to have that same problem. So I'm not 100% sure what to do here yet. It may end up that I'm doing some kind of like toggle switch for it. Maybe we'll try and figure out the ignition wiring, but that's a road to go down another day. And then this here would be the factory ground, so it would go from the ground of the intake to the battery. Since the battery is no longer going to be here, and that's something I need to discuss, the battery will no longer be here because the intake needs to be there. The initial thought was to put it, wipe the dust away, would be to put it somewhere here, probably right there, and then, you know, run a new wire up to the front. That would be great, and that's the most common way to do things, because, you know, you're taking weight from the front, putting it in the back, and that's what this car needs, especially with this big iron blocked 4-cylinder. Big. However, I start to question myself of maybe putting it on the driver's side, because we're now adding a ton of weight to the passenger side of this engine. We're adding a fairly heavy supercharger to this side, and we're adding the intake piping to this side, and we're taking away stuff from that side. So, you know, we're taking weight away from the left front of the car and putting it to the right front. So maybe putting an additional 5 or 6 pounds to the left side wouldn't be a bad idea, because this guy won't be going back in. I will be going to a dry cell, so it'll be smaller and lighter, and could go over there probably pretty easily. And it saves me from having wiring, having that big positive cable going all the way to that, which I've never felt real good about, because that's just a lot more of high amperage wire running through your car, waiting to find something to spark on. Okay, fuse box, it's time. It is time to disassemble this horrific looking fuse box. This was done at an event because I had an issue where the fuse box interfered with some belts, because it was previously over here. The factory mounting for it is to be screwed in, I think, right here. However, it did not work in this application for whatever reason, I don't remember. And we had to do something. And as often happens, those temporary repairs turned into a permanent repair because, well, it kept working. So here's the fuse box. There's really not much to it. That's not a whole lot of wires in comparison to a modern vehicle. But, gotta do something with it. Preferably, I'd like to tuck it closer to over here. Here you can see the line of where I riveted in a whole section from another car. Right here, because this whole battery tray was missing and all of this was rusted out. So, that's a previous repair. I'm gonna keep it there, though. Maybe. Yeah, it should have plenty of airflow for the intake, so that's fine. Okay, so this I need to keep a hold of because it does clip very nicely into that, keeps it neat. But let's see. I had run the wires underneath the frame rail. Previously they would have run up through here. How much slack? Not a whole lot of slack there. So that's why it was kind of stuck here. But not a big fan of that. I would definitely like it to come back over here if possible. So this I'm going to keep just because I do want the ground for the engine in the future. I may just, yeah, that's probably what I'll do. I'll probably just terminate it right here. So it's just a nice chassis ground. The motorcycles, the tray I'll probably end up keeping. It's an S13 battery tray. Come on, that's a red item. So yeah, it'll just stay there basically needlessly. But let's start to maybe unravel some of this stuff and unplug it, because I am pretty familiar with how everything plugs in here, so that we can sort it out. Okay, well, it's a new day, and we made pretty good progress yesterday. So yesterday I got most of the wiring out of here. I got the lower harness just kind of sitting down there. I want to get the main harness out today. Hey, socket. I want to get the alternator off of there so I can clean it. And, yeah, then just start cleaning. You know, it's amazing the things you find when you pull a car apart. This alternator bracket has been loose for who knows how long. And interestingly, that had to come off anyway because this is the pulley bracket, and pulleys for basically having the belt go to the supercharger and to the alternator. So that will go right there. And it's already got bolts with it, so like I said, I don't have to put those back in. But that'll be an interesting process. Apparently we got to do a little bit of trimming to the alternator bracket, the top one itself. We'll see. All right, here's our factory ECU. And its factory wiring harness. Let's get that off of there. And what a mess this is. I had to take this all apart at one point. You can actually see it right here. And solder in a resistor into the, little spider, into the knock sensor circuit. So this engine, I basically bypassed the knock sensor on it because I could never get the ECU to correctly read the knock sensor for whatever reason. I tried running new wires to it. I tried the knock sensors, different ECUs. Never. I don't think it's supposed to be like that. This is the plug that takes the original harness, the engine harness, and gets it to the cluster. And this is the part that we're basically losing. I think there's only one wire in the new harness that goes to this, and I believe that is for the tach. So a large amount of the problems that I was mentioning earlier with the starter and whatnot stem to that. And obviously getting fuel pump signal, stuff like that. Oh, there it is. Stock engine harness. The rat's nest. Also, I remembered in my sleep, well, I remember while I was going to sleep last night, that the extra vacuum is for the ECU because it reads boost and vacuum pressure as well. Clean. Is it the cleanest engine bay in the world? No. But I'm a realist. It's a race car. It gets used. It gets dirty. So, I'm glad to get the grunge and mold and crap out of there, but this is probably clean enough for me. Alright, well, I think that's about all we're going to do for this episode. Next time we'll definitely be putting parts on rather than taking parts off. So look forward to that. Thanks to my patrons for the support. We're starting to get closer to really making some faster progress with this car. So thanks to you guys, and thanks for the support there. And I definitely look forward to doing more stuff here in the garage, and I'm really starting to get excited for this project once again.